increasing opportunities in life, pulling people from poverty, empowering women, and driving economic growth. Understanding barriers to education is crucial. This quote by a professor at Cambridge University's Faculty of Education perfectly captures the value of education, not just for learning, but for helping to solve some of the world's most pressing problems. A quality education is a route out of poverty. It's crucial to poverty reduction, and if all students in developing countries left school with reading skills, over 170 million people could escape from poverty, massively reducing aid. A quality education supports good health and population growth and reduces infant mortality. A child whose mother can read is 50% more likely to live past the age of 5, and an educated woman is more likely to have fewer children, therefore contributing to a manageable population. A quality education helps women earn more. Every additional year at school grows female earnings by 20%. A quality education is crucial to poverty reduction. If all students in developing countries left school with reading skills, over 170 million people could escape from poverty, massively reducing aid reliance. The value of getting education right is immense. Not only does it impact on lives of children, but also whole communities and economies, including climate change. Next slide, please. With the COVID-19 pandemic, school closures have kept 90% of children, approximately 1.57 billion, out of school. 11 million primary and secondary school learners worldwide, 5.2 million of whom are girls, are at a risk of never returning to school. Learning already lost as a result of 5 months of school closures will cost this generation approximately $10 trillion in lifetime earnings. School closures may lead to 65% increase in teenage pregnancy. Approximately 1 million girls have been blocked from returning to school due to pregnancy. And yet, childbirth is the leading cause of adolescent girl deaths in sub-Saharan Africa. 71 million people have been pushed back into extreme poverty. COVID-19 will have long-term implications on education, that is for sure. Gains made in changing social norms so more girls can attend school may be lost. With a drop in earnings resulting from the impact of COVID-19 on livelihoods, we are likely to see an increase in girls being married by families and subsequent increase in teenage pregnancies, making a return to school very difficult. Globally, aid to education has always been low, and now with more aid being diverted to health, livelihoods, etc., it means the education share decreases yet further. It's thus critical that as players in this sector, we continue to engage with different stakeholders and mitigate the likely impact of COVID-19 on education. With those few introductory remarks, I will now welcome our colleagues from Link Malawi to make a presentation on Team Girl Malawi project. You are welcome. Harold from Malawi, would you present?
All right. Thank you so much, Josephine.
Next session. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Josephine. And greetings to all. I am Harold Kuombola, Country Director for Link Community Development in Malawi. So I want to share with you on our project, the Team Girl Malawi project. TEAM stands for Transformation Empowerment for Marginalized Adolescent Girls in Malawi. So this is also to give you our experiences and what we are doing in terms of supporting inclusive and equitable quality of education for all across Malawi. So the Team Girl Malawi project is being implemented in 3 districts in Malawi, covering a total of 40 communities. We really focused on marginalized girls aged 10 to 19, and these are girls who have never been in school. Some of them have never been in school, have never had a chance to go to school, or some of them dropped out of school without gaining functional literacy or numeracy for various reasons. Some of them are teen mothers, they have babies. Some of them live in or are heads of various households, and therefore they are in child-headed households or members of those households. Some of them have got various disabilities, or physical disabilities or learning disabilities. So that is our target group, and they are really a marginalized grouping, which are oftentimes not as included in the normal or conventional sectors, or they face a number of segregations wide in their communities. So we aim to target those and improve their learning outcomes, allowing them to transition to education and also gain meaningful employment to improve their life chances for attaining self-reliance and economic independence, changing their lives and those of the next generation. Next slide, please. The Team Girl project, we have our first cohort of 2,000 girls and 400 boys. We are in year 3 of our programs. Our key activities are mainly to provide an education opportunity for these girls. In this sense, we are doing complementary basic education. So this is an education platform that allows them to gain functional literacy and numeracy, suiting, tailor-made to their needs and to their specific requirements of various marginalities. And to support the learning, we looked at developing and supporting their well-being and resilience. They had to have the self-esteem and the confidence to navigate through the day-to-day challenges that they face, but also to navigate on issues around sexual and reproductive health and rights, to be able to make the right decisions in life and through their education. To do that, we also have to work with the primary schools who would be hosting them to create an inclusive environment that can accommodate learners with all types of marginality or difficulties or physical disabilities. A cross-cutting theme within that work is ensuring that every child feels safe and is protected. And if any cases occur, they are managed well, and there is a capacity within the team to manage any cases that are taking place. One of the aspects is also to reach out to the various communities and gain community support, change attitudes and perceptions towards learners with various marginalities. And so we have got radio programs and radio listening clubs that reach out to various teams. And to develop their skills to earning, we are having components that look into vocational training and acquisition of skills. One of the things is to sensitize the communities and support the communities on engendering an extremely marginalized girls. How do communities support extremely marginalized girls? And food, because of hunger, we support learners with food rations to enable them to attend to class and to the CBE and learning and the clubs effectively. We support also in food. Next slide, please. So for us to understand how to arrive at these strategies, we looked at reviewing their learning world. What would girls require to learn? So some of the factors we are handling include poverty cases, or our learners are in poverty situations, and some of them, more than half, about half, are caregivers or mothers, or they have various household responsibilities. There are various household chores, but also they are learners with various marginalities. When we look at the school environment, there's high student-teacher ratios of close to 80:1. There are hidden costs on attending to school, and then issues around food insecurity at home. When someone has slept on an empty stomach, it's challenging for them to go back into school. And then issues around bullying within the school environment, where almost 60% of Our learners talked about that. And then issues also around knowledge and understanding. And so in the last months, there's now another challenge of COVID-19 on top of these challenges. So our environment is that way, and that's where we are operating in. Next slide, please. So with COVID-19, you will recall schools closed, our learning centers also closed, and that means there is a loss of learning. And we are in a context where there is limited digital learning. But also in cases where that can spur increased marriages and pregnancies as learners are out in their homes full time with no learning going on. But also in cases where schools provided an option for social protection, that is lost. And when we resume teaching, there are issues to do with hygiene in the schools because managing COVID-19 requires hygiene. And then issues around teaching and learning. How do we teach when someone is required to wear a mask or observing some social distancing? And then impacts around the whole and the household chores, especially for girls, and also managing the hidden costs that are there. Within the community, there are also issues around pressures for marriage, going into early marriages, and food security at home, but also issues around child labor and migration. So within COVID-19, the challenge is also high for learners with various disabilities, or even those with various multiple disabilities. How do they access various medicines, but also how do they manage COVID-19 themselves? So that's the context we're working in and how the team project also structured itself. I'll hand over to our chair, Josephine. Thank you.
Very good too.
Great. Thank you, Harold, for that elaborate and informative presentation, sharing with us the ground experience on the impact of COVID on education. We will now break into our groups for the breakout sessions. And we have already been assigned to different groups by our IT. In each group, we'll have a couple of questions, which are those that are before you on the slides. And we'll be required to have further discussions on this topic guided by those questions. Write our ideas on a flip chart, after which we'll come back to the plenary to present. Our group work will last for 20 minutes. We will again be supported by our IT from Alliance to manage the time. We will get prompts to inform us of if you are running out of time. At this point, I will ask all the group leaders to take lead now. I will now invite each group to briefly give us a summary of what you discussed. I think I'll start with just group one. You have about a minute to do this. So share with us your ideas, group one, and then we'll have group two, then final group three.
Okay, Harold, I was taking notes, so I can probably do it within the minute. I think what came out for our questions 1 and 2 is the importance of community. So the question 1 was connected to supporting learning with no digital support. And we had suggestions around community workers, community learning hubs, be in contact with community leaders who can pass on learning materials or support small study circles. We also talked about offline learning hubs like the Raspberry Pi that you can download materials but then use them offline. And the second question was about, I'm trying to read what it was, supporting vulnerable, how to support the vulnerable girls or children. And again, it was very much engaging with community groups who have access to these girls to ensure that they're safe and protected. So it could be linking with school management bodies and existing structures that are already operating within the community, like youth councils, or with the community leaders, We talked about using sports for social change and how some projects have adapted the curriculum so they can play sport and then feed on information about staying safe during COVID. And we also talked about using, for smaller projects with fewer beneficiaries, getting their mobile numbers at the beginning of the project, or mobile numbers connected within their family, having a weekly catch up with beneficiary girls, so the girls still feel that they're part of the project and they feel that they're supported and protected. I hope that summed it up for group 1. Okay.
Thank you. Group 2 then. Can we hear from group 2?
Yep. Excuse me, sorry, thank you. So for our first question, we looked at how to train and support teachers during COVID. We had a really interesting point from looking at distance learning using community available technology from the Open University, particularly looking at WhatsApp and creating bite-sized learning activities for improved teaching practice. And also kind of connecting the teachers themselves through WhatsApp to have a peer support network. We also looked at different modalities such as digital for a teacher training pack, which incorporated a feedback mechanism so the actual pack itself could be improved. And while the digital aspect might not work in the Malawi context necessarily, the importance of feeding back and it being two-way communication definitely translated. And then we also looked at Facebook as a method for professional development and text messages for supporting teachers as well. So recognition of finding the right tools for the right context. And then we also had a point around types of funding available to support all of this work. And then the second point was around how to get marginalised children back into school. There was a general recognition from everyone that speaking directly with the children was important. In team, we have about 12% of our learners having access to a phone. So to try and kind of use those that method when possible, but then also engaging the parents and community more broadly, so undertaking community sensitization through word of mouth and potentially engaging community leaders. And then Sophie spoke about team using loudspeakers on the side of a vehicle to kind of blare out the messages as well, but noted a challenge with social distancing. Feel free to jump in if I've missed anything.
Okay, so can we have group 3? Time is not on our side.
Thanks, Josephine. We looked at how to teach and learn safely when schools reopen. A few people reflected on the opportunity that COVID and shutting down schools has provided to us to reassess how we are delivering teaching and how engaged people are with it, and whether we need to make changes to our teaching practice. Especially, this has given us an opportunity to work in smaller groups. Maybe that's more direct interaction between the teacher and the students, and getting back to the basics of teaching skills. So it's been an opportunity to do that. Also, it's a time to reflect on what we teach and whether we should be looking more at Indigenous knowledge, particularly on issues like the environment. We noted the importance of a sensitization campaign for teachers and for learners on COVID transmission prevention at school and in the community. And we touched on psychosocial support, the importance of integrating that into teaching for the teachers and the learners, and how WhatsApp could be used as one of the tools for peer support, which can be very useful for social and emotional learning. And unfortunately, we didn't have time to discuss monitoring, so maybe we can come back to that another day.
Okay. Thank you all for the presentations, which are quite useful and informative. I will now invite Harold from Malawi to summarize this session with a brief on the solutions that you have from the Team Girl Malawi project. You just have 2 minutes to do that, Harold from Malawi.
All right, thanks so much, Josephine. So from the Team Girl Malawi, we have, next slide, please. We have an overall learning ratio of 1 to 15, where we have got 60 learners for every 4 facilitators. And now during the COVID-19, we disaggregated that ratio further down to 4 to 1 facilitators per meeting. So the idea is to ensure that there is good learning, but also manage the numbers and provide individual support to every marginalized learner. We have looked at reducing the curriculum, so the content, ensuring that we focus on literacy and numeracy for this period, but obviously setting out innovations that can be scaled up depending on need. So this has meant that from 7, we are doing now 4 subjects. We have also reviewed the curriculum for the girls' clubs to focus on really the environment we are in. How can we support girls to build their self-esteem, but also make the right decisions and treat any matter coming up with due urgency? One of the key things is around the rain period. We have continued to support learners at home with food to reduce the burden of going to farms to do paid piecework for food during the hunger period. And also intensified the community engagement, because all we focus on is ensuring that there's community contribution, sustainable project implementation. So radio messaging has been tailor-made to motivate the communities and stakeholders to engage. And specifically for marginalized learners, we are looking at targeted assessments and support. So how can we support each learner individually according to their individual needs? Key to all these changes is that the Ministry of Education has been at the center, developing a lot of these solutions and pursuing adaptations in there. So these are some of the few things that we are doing. We know that in this period, there are different contexts. No single person has all the right answers. So we are also keen to learn from others on what has been shared here. But the key is that within this period, we do no harm. We protect our beneficiaries and also try and instill a normality that includes some learning and ensure that everyone else is safe. Thanks so much. Over to you, Josephine.
Yes, thank you, Harold, for that summary and the experience from Malawi. I just want to let you all know that there's a link on the group chat where we can type in our additional submissions on this topic. Please feel free to use that. We have now come to the end of our session, and I would like to re-echo the following. I'd like to re-echo the following. Governments face deep economic recession, but should remember that an educated population will most likely be their most valuable resource as they recover and confront future challenges. Governments must protect education budgets to mitigate COVID's long-term effects on children. The international community must give support by sustaining aid to education so that all countries can invest in their children's future instead of cutting education spending when it's needed most. Unless we act now, the overall education financing gap for low-income countries, currently at approximately $148 billion per year, could increase by 30% as a result of this crisis. To deliver learning differently and well requires a lot of investment and time to develop, produce, train, and distribute materials, whether this is radio, self-study packs, or small group teaching with a revised curriculum and methods. This is a challenge for NGOs trying to respond, as well as governments, which are also dealing with the health emergency and limited budgets. We have a case from Malawi that we think we should celebrate. In the recent budget, the Malawi government gave the education sector the greatest share on education at 21%, and hopefully other governments would follow from this great example. So with those concluding remarks, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all for joining this session. I also would like to thank the organizers of this event, and wish you all a fruitful rest of the day. Thank you, and I will now hand over to Catherine, our event organizer.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Josephine, and to the other Link colleagues who contributed to this session, to Sam, Kate and Lucy based here in Scotland, and to Harry, Harold, Sophie and Josephine, our session chair. I hope you've all enjoyed the discussions today. Please do continue the conversations through our education chat thread if you're logged on to the wider conference platform today. And we also have that Google Doc, the collaborative document that it would be great if you could share notes from the discussions, any relevant links. I think it is time for us all to have a break now. So without further ado, we shall close the session. And just as a reminder to you, please do take the time to browse the exhibition hall during your lunch break. We have Link Education International have a virtual exhibition stand there. So if you're keen to read more about what they do, please do visit the stand, and along with some of the other exhibitors. We also have an exhibitor quiz, which you can get involved in order to win a £50 hamper full of ethical fair trade goodies. So yeah, the stakes are high there. So please do get involved in that. Our next on the programme in terms of our proceedings today, we will have our third block of sessions at 1:30, and the options there are humanitarian, how COVID has changed the humanitarian landscape. There's a session on safeguarding in times of COVID-19, and public health communications. So particularly the safeguarding session and that would be particularly relevant, I think, to some of the conversations today. So thank you all, and see you soon.